Thank you for coming, and also thank you for your continued interest and support of local food and local beverages and the people who grow them and create with them. So it's, we really appreciate the 5 years of support that you've given this program. Very gratified. I want to start today by introducing our panelists. First of all, we have Robin Epperson-McCarthy from Salford Cellars, Marcos Ribeiro from Craftmaster Hops, and Stefan Bogardus from the North Fork Table and Inn. So thank you all for coming. And of course, you all know our very wonderfully capable moderator, Laura Donnelly. And Laura is the food editor for the East Hampton Star, accomplished pastry chef in her own right, and a frequent contributor to the Barefoot Contessa TV programs and cookbooks. Also want to acknowledge our media partner at Edible East End, and also send a note of appreciation to Peconic Land Trust staff, people like Kathy and Bridget and Pam and Yvette. Not only organize and publicize the series, they also break down the conference room that's here usually, set up, and then have to put it all back again together. Been a yeoman's effort definitely, and deserving of thanks. Let me see here. Put my glasses on so I can see what's next. That kind of brings me to the state of our parking lot, which has not started yet, but we're getting really, really close. That's the good news. The bad news is that we will be holding the rest of the series here because it just won't be done in time. So, but we will be able to offer our first educational program of the series on site at Bridge Gardens, and that's next Saturday, the 24th. Introduction to Beekeeping by John Witzenbacher and his wife Sophia. It's I'm proud to announce that it's sold out. So if you haven't gotten your ticket, that's reserved your spot. I'm sorry, but it's also wonderful news. That is just the first of a full season of educational programs and concerts and tours. And so the best way of keeping abreast of those at Bridge Gardens and the rest of the ones that the Land Trust offers is through Connections magazine. So you probably all are get that, and that really is a good way of keeping in touch and see what's coming up next. So I hope to see you all at, if not at all of them, at many of those upcoming programs. You can enjoy them at reduced rates if you become a member. And by becoming a member, you really, it's the best way of showing your support for what we do, not only at Bridge Gardens, but for the Land Trust as a whole. So if you haven't become a member, I urge you to do so today. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Laura and our wonderful panelists.
Thank you, Rick.
Sure.
Thank you all. Thank you to everybody he already thanked. Thanks you guys for coming all the way. North Fork is very well represented today in all aspects. Robin, as Rick said, has Salford Cellars and Peconic Cellar Door, or the wine tasting room. And she also has tinnitus from swimming with sharks. So if she can't hear your questions later, then, and everybody will have a chance to ask questions later. Marcos Ribeiro, you have Craftmaster Hops, which is the only, the largest organic hops farm east of Idaho, I understand.
Correct.
And you also run a masonry business, so you're not very hard-working, busy guy.
Quite lazy.
Stefan Bogardus, the chef at North Fork Table and Inn, took over, worked with, and then eventually took over for Jerry Hayden, who was the chef there, who sadly got ALS and died, I think, in 2015. Who here has been to the North Fork Table?
Nice.
That's good, that's good, I'd like to see it. Anybody else who hasn't been there, save your pennies and make a trip. It's the best restaurant on Long Island, as far as I'm concerned. And the best pastry chef, period. So, Robin, if you could begin and just explain, how you got to where you are, the route, through where you're from, through school, and how you ended up doing what you're doing now.
Sure. I actually went to school. I was pre-med. I was a biology major with a chemistry minor heading to med school, and went to the University of Mary Washington out in Fredericksburg, Virginia, and took a lot of microbiology classes. We actually made wine my freshman year of college, so I was 18 making wine, but not able to taste it, which is probably a good thing because it was chemistry experiments. I'm sure it wasn't very good. But I remember at that time the professor telling us this is actually a path for microbiology. There's actually it's enology. You can become a wine chemist. You can become a winemaker. It's microbiology. And I was like, oh, I'm from a wine region. I don't think anybody's doing that there. And then fast forward 4 years later, I was home studying for my MCATs. Mom's kind of tough and said I couldn't live home rent free, so I had to go get a job, and I ended up through the sailing industry finding out about Premium Wine Group, which is a contract custom crush facility up on the North Fork in Mattatuck, which I saw being built when I was in high school and had no idea what these massive warehouses were until I walked in. And actually Eric Bilka, who I don't know if you guys came to the last one, I walked onto the crush pad and I was wearing an interview outfit. I was wearing a short skirt, high heels, blouse, jacket, walked onto the crush pad where, if you've ever seen a winery during harvest, there's like an avalanche of fruit coming in and it's just go, 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 go. And Eric was on the crush pad working the presses, and I kind of came in and said, hi, I'm Robin, I'm looking for Russell Hearn. And he's like, why, Gave him the whole spiel. He's like, oh, Russell's off today. And we don't need a lab director. We already have a lab person. So I was like, oh, okay, are you in charge of hiring and firing? And he goes, no. And I was like, can I talk to that guy? So I didn't realize it at the time, but he shut down the crush pad, which is a really big deal, marched me into Russell's office where I put my resume, piece of paper, a little note. Russ called me the next day. I went in, we talked for about 45 minutes about sailing on the Peconic Bay, and he hired me, and I was there for about 6.5 years. And it was christening by fire. I had started in October of 2003, which was like peak harvest. I was working for David Lecomte, who is a French winemaker. He's actually at City Winery now as I think he's a production winemaker, and they also have another Boston facility. But I learned in half French, half English what I was doing in the lab, and Russell had his entire enology library there, so I basically read all the textbooks because I was still in that mode of I should be studying for something. Should have been studying for my MCATs, but wine was far more interesting at the time. Met people like Bridget Quinn and John Maselli and Eric, and fell into a really great wine community and absolutely loved it, and then ended up working harvests in Australia, New Zealand, worked at Vavasor, Curly Flat, Framingham, Kilchurn Winery, which is a sparkling house down there, Bay of Fires Winery, and then went out to Paso Robles in 2009. And was supposed to move out there, but the economy kind of collapsed in California, so I ended up coming back and then worked with Martha Clare as their assistant winemaker, helped Roanoke Vineyards open up their tasting room because I knew I wanted to start Salford Cellars at some point, but needed to know about the sales and marketing side of it because I've worked with a lot of wonderful winemakers that don't know how to market themselves, and in an age of social media, you really have to be able to market and present yourself and talk in front of a room of 40 people. And so I went to work for Roanoke, opened their lovely tasting room, and worked with them for about 3 years. And then was running Salford Cellars, running their tasting room, and then had my daughter, and something had to give. So ended up leaving Roanoke, and then this past year, Ali Shaper, my business partner, and I opened up Peconic Cellar Door so that we could stop doing all the farmers markets and festivals and, basically have a place with a key that we can lock up at the end of the night. So it's been a lot of work and it's been a lot of fun. And I've had some great mentors. Premium Wine Group was a wonderful place to learn because I worked with about 12 different winemakers. Gilles Martin, John Leo, Russell Hearn, Juan Maselli Martinez. I learned a lot just by being there and talking to them and, learning a little bit of French. Enough to curse properly during, stuff going wrong in the crush pad. Yeah. And then, so Salford Cellars, I started in 2014 because I was inspired by, one, my good friend, Ali Shaper, who kind of gave me a kick in the rear and said, what are you waiting for? Do your own thing. You don't need to work for somebody else. You can start with a little bit of capital in the wine industry. A little bit of money doesn't go that far, but when you kind of move and do it the right way, like I did, I just started out with it was only supposed to be one label. It was going to be Sauvignon Blanc, which is the Bogardus, which we're going to taste later. But that turned into that, a stainless steel Sauvignon Blanc. Steve Mudd is one of the growers I work with, and he convinced me to look at Chardonnay, which I wasn't going to do because there's so much Chardonnay out here. But when I found this one particular vineyard, I just couldn't. It was like a puppy, you know, like I just couldn't leave it out there. It had to come home with me. And then I joked that I did it to shut up my Italian uncle, but I made a red blend that's a Merlot Cab Sauv that I've actually absolutely fell in love with because I love Merlot. Merlot on Long Island is a thing, and it's getting bigger and bigger. And, yeah, so that's pretty much it, and then here we are. And I talk really fast. I'm sorry.
I have no questions for you from this point on. Marcos, so tell us your background, how you ended up doing what you're doing, two different things.
These are pelletized hops, so I'm going to pass these around just so everybody can kind of
Pelletized hops.
smell really good. Smell and see the aroma. So I'm first generation Portuguese. My parents were both immigrants from Portugal. I was born here in Islip. Went to Sachem, went to high school, went to college. I got my associates in architectural design. Finished that and figured I didn't want to get coffee for an architect, so I started my own masonry company because I'm Portuguese, of course. So I did that. I've always, for years, always wanted to be involved in agriculture. It's something I'm just drawn to it. I love growing things. It's amazing. So I had a farm stand in Hotesville. This is where I grew up for a couple of years, I'd say 3 to 4 years, and then kind of focused on other things and came back to it. And then finally, me and a longtime friend, Pat Labudi, we always wanted to do some sort of venture together. We came up with this idea. I was like, why don't we grow hops? And it was just, I think I had heard about, the craft explosion in terms of beer and things like that. So I grew it at my farm stand for 2 years, and I said, yeah, maybe I could do this commercially. And oh my God, 2 totally different things, going from 150 plants to 24,000 plants.
Wow.
Yeah, eye-opening. So we're going into our 3rd year of commercial hop growing, and I've definitely learned a lot. It's a massive endeavor, but I'm getting better at it, not worse. So going in the right direction. And yes, we are the largest certified organic hop farm, which even makes my life that much harder because organic hops is hard to do. It's not easy. But doing it.
Thank you. Stefan.
My name is Stefan Bogardus. I'm the executive chef of the North Fork Table and Inn in Southold, which clearly a lot of you are familiar with. I'm born and raised on the North Fork. I was born in Riverhead. I graduated from Antwerp High School. I got a job. My dad was the tile foreman at Stony Brook University Hospital, and he had a side business where he set tile in restaurants and was approached by a gentleman named Hans Long, who had Hans's Gasthaus in Jamesport. And so when I was 8, I went to work with my dad so we could hang out. And we met Hansi. They opened up their restaurants. The partnership dwindled. He liquidated assets and bought a food truck. And a couple years later, when I was 12, they asked me if I wanted to work in a food truck. And it was way before it was cool and like the thing to do. But he paid me in cash and taught me how to make sausage, and we drank Austrian beer out of coffee mugs throughout the day. So it was great. I really, really, really liked the vibes of the restaurant. I liked the hospitality industry. I liked learning, and food is an endless opportunity to reflect and to educate. So I worked in local restaurants, 4 doors down, Farmer's Bar. My first place is Doolittle's in Mattatuck. Not exactly super notable, but landmarks in their own rights. And so then I was reunited with the former executive chef of Hans's Gasthaus a couple years later, and he told me about the Culinary Institute of America in Hyde Park, and I applied, got accepted, did my internship with the Breakers Hotel in Palm Beach, Florida. It was where I had my first run-in with 5-star, 5-diamond food and French cuisine at their restaurant L'Escalier, where I was full-time. I then came back to Long Island after finishing culinary school in 2009, got a job at the new restaurant on the North Fork called the North Fork Table and Inn for Jerry Hayden and Claudia Fleming. Spent about 2 years there, prep cook to sous chef, then left and worked for Danielle Balut at Cafe Balut Palm Beach, and transferred to Restaurant Danielle in New York City on the Upper East Side when it had 3 stars. It's still a great restaurant to go. But then Jerry was diagnosed with ALS, and he was my mentor. Even though we had parted ways, we stayed in touch, and he reached out. I reached out to him, he reached out to me, I don't really remember. And so he couldn't work anymore with his hands, but his mind was still going. Anyone who knew him knew how intelligent and how naturally gifted he was. So I came back, and for about just less than 2 years, I was his hands for his brain, and we worked together pretty beautifully and attained a number of accolades. And then I decided that I should focus a little bit on my personal life and followed this woman up to Rochester, where she was from. And that's a way different food scene than East Hampton. But I got a job and was rapidly promoted, and I learned a lot of things about management, about staffing, and had the experience to be the executive chef at a country club for about 580 members. And we were the Northeast Regional Headquarters for the LPGA. So it was cool, it was nice, it was still quite refined, and I still had the opportunity to learn, which I love to do. Coming back to the North Fork, unfortunately, well, fortunately for me, but unfortunately after Jerry passed away in September of 2015, Claudia asked me to come home. Claudia Fleming is the pastry chef and owner of the North Fork Table and Inn. Things that we dedicate ourselves to at the restaurant, one of the things that Jerry and Claudia were famed for that I have picked up and kind of ran with was sourcing as much as possible locally. Farm to table has become a big buzzword, and a lot of people use it. We focus ourselves on refinement and cuisine. If you're not working with the best possible ingredient, you're a fool and you're not going to get very far. If you really care about what you're doing, what you're putting in your body, and what you're serving to people, you need to be focused on what's at the peak of season as close as possible to the restaurant. A number of opportunities have greeted us on the North Fork because of Jerry's and mine and Claudia's focus on the infrastructure in the farming community. A number of loans and a number of kind of handshake business deals have led to the births of some really substantial agricultural ventures. And so now it's awesome because I get the first pick at most vegetables. I get text messages from a lot of phenomenally gifted people with the best possible product. And we source as much as possible local. Our ultimate goal is to manipulate the product as little as possible to highlight quality characteristics to make it as good, if not better, than the raw product itself. So more often than not, it's a very simplistic cuisine, but it's extremely consistent and extremely thought out. I love what I do. We have a phenomenal group of people, and the place that we do it is fantastic. I'm super happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Stefan. So, Robin, when you started making Sauvignon Blanc, you described one of your wines as the feral child of the cellar. Now, I would imagine the feral child is the one who gets to eat Reese's peanut butter cups in bed and stay up all night. What exactly is the feral child of the cellar? What did you let that wine do?
Whatever it wanted. Yeah, it's working in the contract facility. They kind of, when I kind of come in and say I'm doing feral in the wine industry, you also see it referred to as sauvage, means that it's indigenous yeast. So the Bogardus that you guys are going to have, I let it go a little bit savage. So it starts off on its own yeast. So Saccharomyces cerevisiae is the yeast that we use for beer, for fermenting bread, for most fermentations. We use it for wine, and it's basically present everywhere. It's in this room, it's on our skin, it's on the grapes when they come in. So it starts fermenting on its own in barrels, in neutral oak barrels. So it's very different than what we're used to seeing with Sauvignon Blanc, which is stainless steel with very specific yeast strains and done at certain temperatures. So this one gets to do its own thing within reason. Once it starts getting all foamy and gross, that's when we kind of cool it off and take control of fermentation and get it going.
How was that wine?
Well, you'll see this afternoon.
I mean, we're gonna have the feral child?
Yeah.
Awesome.
It's not totally funky. Sometimes when you see the Sauvage Sauvignon Blancs, they can be really funky. But I kind of go in at one point. It's like parenting. You let them go until they're in danger, and then you. So that's what we do with this one. So it's still clean and it's still beautiful and it's still balanced, but it hasn't it hasn't totally gone off the cliff.
Now, when did you have a baby? 2016?
16,
And so you have a 2-year-old?
2-year-old. Yeah.
And is that 2-year-old running around, crashing into furniture?
Yeah.
Driving a car?
No, she's got a little tractor. Yeah, no, she's home with her daddy right now, torturing him. But I was telling them in the kitchen when we left the hospital in Southampton, they handed her to me and basically said, "She's very bright. Good luck."
That's great. That's great.
Yeah, so and I've got some great pictures of her out in the vineyard. She comes out with me and steals the grapes, and it was quite funny this year when the grapes were ready to be picked. She was, I kept turning around and she's like through the mesh netting, which is these teeny little squares, and her little fingers could just get in there, and she was just grazing down. I'm like, all right, I guess they're ready.
That's funny. Thank you. Marcos, so can you explain from the beginning, because I saw some pictures of these tall posts that you placed. Tell us the process of growing hops, like how long it takes, how tall do they grow? Is it a vine? I don't know.
So hops are referred to as a vine. They're perennial. You plant them once, and typically they will last over 50 years, 70 years. Usually, the variety falls out of flavor or favor, and they get ripped up. But so they're vines. They're not vines. They're not like grapes. They die back to the crown, which is just above the soil every year, and then they resprout. So they actually grow very quickly. So starting in 3 to 4 weeks, they'll come out as shoots, just like asparagus, but they keep going. And if you don't prune back the crown, you could have up to 100 shoots. And why does that occur? Is because they're looking for something to climb. And typically, once a plant becomes established, if they were out in the wild, they would have a tree or something that they would be climbing. So we try to duplicate that by having a trellis system. We have what's called a German Be Trellis. It's actually a hybrid because in Germany it's much taller. They like 8 meters or something like that. We're at 18 feet. So starting now, we just in an established hop yard, you'll go and you'll do what's called crowning, where you take literally a saw blade and you cut the first 1 to 2 inches of the top of the plant. We do that because one of the biggest problems we have with hops is called downy mildew, and it wreaks havoc throughout the season. So you really have to start the season right, and that's one of the ways to start right. From that, now we start stringing, and on our farm, which we started yesterday, we have 44,000 strings. So it takes us a really long time to string. But we start now, and hopefully in a month, we should be pretty close to being done. If not, 2 or 3 guys will keep stringing, and then 2 guys will start training. So when you go down the row, you're in the aisle, and the strings actually go to the plants on a V to increase yield. From there, so once we're done stringing, the guys will start going back and helping the plant find the string. And what we want is 3 to 4 vines per string, and then we cut everything else around it because we want the energy of the plant to be focused on those. Then throughout the season, we just maintain fertilizing, irrigation. Spraying is very important, very, very important. We try to spray every 5 days, being organic. It's always a battle with downy mildew. And then come June, the schedule gets a little bit better, and you're back to 50 hours a week instead of 65 hours a week. And then then come harvest time is usually about the second to third week of August. Then we start picking for one side of the field, and we just cut them at the bottom and cut them at the top, drop into the farm wagon, take it to our wolf harvester that's in the barn. Came from Germany. It's actually older than I am. It's from 1974. And then we just feed this thing. We feed this thing. The entire vine gets pulled into the machine, and then there's drums with fingers that systematically get closer and closer as they go down. The vine is pulled through the machine, picks off the leaves and the hop cones, and then there's a series of fans and conveyors that actually separate the hop cones from the leaves, because hop cones will roll and leaves won't. The trash comes out the back and the hops out the side. Take it to our dryer. We have 2 dryers that together are about the size of this room, with fans that are about 4 feet tall. And if you ever pass by the barn in the end of August, you will hear them because they're very loud. And then once the hops are dry, it usually takes about 2 to 3 days, depending on the weather, because we use air to dry them. So if it was really dry at night, better for us. If it was raining, worse for us. And then from there, we pelletize them, and that's where you see those T90 pellets that went around. We package them. We actually use liquid nitrogen to cool them instantly so that we can bag them. Goes into the cooler, and then we start calling up breweries to get it out the door, out of my cooler.
So from when the vine starts growing, does the same vine come back every year and have deeper roots, or is it brand new?
Yeah, so it is like a tree. The roots they can grow as deep as 17 feet. So the roots are massive because you have to think the amount of energy that goes back into climbing 18 feet, and this turns into a decent sized looking plant. It'll be, 3 to 4 feet around and just full of leaves and hop cones if you're lucky. But yeah, it has to tap into a tremendous amount of resources. It's one of the heaviest feeding plants there is. If you look at the chart of nitrogen per acre required, it's like lettuce 30, strawberries 50, hops 150. And that's not true. It's more like 250 pounds of nitrogen per acre. So it's a high input crop.
Wow.
Yep.
Thank you. Stefan, I read somewhere, I read a couple things. You've already told me one thing, fake news. One thing was about you speaking 4 languages. But is it true that your mother gave you a paring knife as a present at the age of 4?
Yeah, and I didn't even cut myself. So I come from a relatively big family. Almost everyone, my parents were from up west, and they moved out in 1981. So all the cousins and aunts and uncles would come out around the holidays. And I was young, and I just wanted to be in the center, right? And so my mom gave me a paring knife and told me to start slicing, dicing, and chopping. I remember we used to have a small cutting board that would pull out from the side below some cabinets. And it was just at my height as long as I was standing on a step stool. And so I would stand there and I'd use a paring knife and I'd just clean broccoli and things like that. But it really, I started pretty early, and I didn't
Your mother must have been a good cook, too.
She was pretty good. She's not good at cooking green vegetables. Not the lie. I've told her a million times she doesn't get it.
That is cool. Oh, the other thing I wanted to ask you, having cooked at fine dining restaurants and also working at country clubs, what is it like to change your cooking style? Am I wrong to assume country clubs might have blander taste buds, less adventurous? I don't want to lead you into...
I like to say that one of the important skills, very similar to what Robin was saying about knowing how to market yourself, is as a culinarian, having the opportunity to create a platform to display your work on is really important and really challenging, because someone could be brilliant, but if you're not able to get your ideas to where it's perceived to be brilliant, they're never going to do anything. So I've had the opportunity where I've had a very diverse background. And at the country club, we used to do banquets for up to 500 people. So we'd cook 38 prime ribs at once. Now, if I spent that much money on beef at the table, my cost percentages would be through the roof and would be closed in a matter of days. But what's really interesting is having the opportunity to do some demographic research and know who you're cooking for and kind of what you're able to get away with and with some creativity. We do not have tuna salad on the menu at North Fork Table, but it used to be at a country club all the time.
But you do have some good tuna dishes.
Indeed.
Excellent. So, Robin, and again, tell me if this is correct, and I'd like you to tell the story about the first time you were buying grapes. Apparently, the bigger, more important established wineries get the pick of the litter, but it sounds like some people helped you out.
Yeah, I have a lot of good friends. One of my main jobs, when I was running Elaborate Premium Wine Group, one of the things I liked about it is that through the year, your job changes. So during the end of August into October, you're doing berry analysis. So I got the opportunity to meet a lot of vineyard managers because they were dropping off the berry samples. Or I was going out to the vineyard and taking the samples myself. And one of those characters is Steve Mudd, who I wasn't born here, but I was raised up here. We moved up here in about 1983 or 4. And Steve Mudd's an old family friend. So basically, when I was ready to start making Sauvignon Blanc, I called him and said, what can you give me? He's like, not much. I was like, come on. It started out with like just 1 ton of Sauvignon Blanc. It was a good year. He ended up being able to give me a little bit more, but I am kind of at the mercy of the bigger guys' contracts. I work as what's called a negotiant, so I don't own my own vineyard because I don't have the capital to put into buying, 1, real estate on the North Fork right now, and 2, it takes about 2 to 3 years for vines to be productive, and if you can give them that 3rd year, you'll get a better root system, you'll get a better established vine. So I don't really have that time at the moment. Hopefully somewhere along the way I can find an investment angel or talk to you about how to get some funding.
Steve Mudd is the son of David Mudd, right?
Right,
Who I believe was
and
the
then
first
Steve Mudd
wine grape
Jr.
grower.
He was, it kind of depends on who you're talking to on what day, because the
That's what he told
Hardgraves, yeah, exactly. The Hardgraves and David Mudd, I think, were kind of planning at the same time, and at the same time, Cornell Cooperative was also. If anybody's worked with Cornell Cooperative, they're amazing in Riverhead, and they were planting vines as well. And so he was kind of looking for more of a crash crop because I think he saw the writing on the wall that potatoes weren't really going to make it out here anymore.
Yeah.
So I think they had a few different things that they were playing with, and grapevines were one of them. Yeah. So they do have some of the oldest vineyards out here.
And then I think Hargrave were the first to make wine, and then now that's turned into Borghese.
Correct. Yep.
Marcos. So when you first started growing hops, and it sounded like you thought, a few little craft brewers are going to buy our product, and you were surprised by some of the companies that were interested. So who buys your hops?
Honestly, when I developed a business plan, because that's what you're supposed to do when you start a business, I was like, I made a list. I was like, okay, these guys will never buy from us. And at the top of the list was Blue Point. They're Budweiser. Come on, they buy hops for $3.50 a pound. Why are they going to buy my hops? And I started growing hops. The biggest customer that I have is Blue Point. So I was like, all right, get out of your business plan. You stink. But it's true. I don't want to shed a bad light on anybody, but people that said that they would support us and local hops in the beginning kind of faded away as it became very real, and they started to use an excuse as pelletization. So what did? We spent a whole bunch of money on a pelletizer that's state of the art, and then all of a sudden it's like, well, kicking rocks and looking down. So it's like, all right. So we got pretty lucky that Blue Point, Peak Organic. We have a couple of other smaller companies, but they kind of, thank God they were there, because if we really had relied on the Long Island breweries, we would have been in trouble. So it kind of, but I think there's an area for everyone, because there is a couple of smaller yards, like 1 acre and 2 acres, kind of on the island. So I think that's the difference. Maybe they already buy from them or something like that. But yes, I was surprised.
It's good to have. I mean, it's admirable that this big company's buying.
Yeah, no, they are actually really. Plus, they have X amount of dollars that they have to spend a year. So yeah, so they do it. No, they're good.
That's good. So, Stefan, I saw a video of you demonstrating some cooking, and I noticed that about 3 or 4 times in a short video, you pointed out the importance of seasoning food, which a lot of people, when they go out to dinner, they're like, oh my God, this is so good. And I usually say to them, yeah, it's the salt and the fat. That's what makes it taste good. And I'm not saying fat is always necessarily, but tell people here, though, how a home cook can maybe almost make food as good as you do, and the importance of seasoning.
Thomas Keller was famously quoted in the French Laundry Cookbook by saying that there's 3 methods of seasoning: salt, fat, and vinegar. And the key is to get as much of that into a product without taking away from its integrity. And the way that you're able to do that in more creative ways that you're able to incorporate those 3 standard methods of seasoning will increase your food. While being able to, one of the big things recently has been foams or burr mixers or certain kinds of chemical manipulations that are mostly bacterial ferments, like xanthan gum, soy lecithin, things along those lines. It's to increase body, because we've noticed that as a culture we've strayed away from using so much fat in the cuisine. So while being able to maintain that mouthfeel and that method of seasoning, while staying away from fats, that has really given birth to a good deal of culinary manipulation on both boutique and large-scale operations. But anyway, that it's really important that people always ask me for tips and tricks, and really it's scientific observation. Study what you're doing as much as you can, and try new things. But knowing when to use the right amount of salt, vinegar, and fat at the right times is the way to make great food. It's not that hard.
We'll be having a little bit of fat today. I also understand, I don't want to get into the Ducati. That's pretty, do you have a Ducati?
Yeah, I like to say that I'm not that exciting a person, but
Bow hunter?
Yeah, I bow hunt. I like to travel. I like to surf. I've had a couple of Ducatis, and right now I have like my dream motorcycle, which is phenomenal. And I rode it in January. Anytime it's over 40 degrees, you'll see me on the bike.
Oh my God. Just
driving
zipping
responsibly.
down the road and the North Ford,
All over.
going 100 miles an hour?
It's rarely above the speed limit.
Very good. I don't believe you.
61 to say that.
Okay, I want to open this. You guys are so great, and I want to open it up to questions. No hands yet. I just like to ask everybody this question. Robin, your favorite food and wine pairing? You know, liking local foods in season.
In season would have to be definitely. My grandmother has a beautiful beach house down in New Suffolk, and it's little neck clams with stainless steel Chardonnay. You know, at sunset on the water, of course. So it's not just the food; it's the environment too.
It's true. Marcos.
I'm gonna say
Or beer.
a prime rib with a 6-point high resolution. It's about 11.1 ABV.
Would that be an IPA or
That's
like
a double IPA.
double? Ooh.
So what does that mean? Because people ask me what makes
Yeah.
it double is that it's typically double the amount of alcohol and it has double the amount of hops. So double IPA.
I actually don't drink. It's been about 6 years. But I like tea a lot, and specifically I've been on a big white tea recently called Yabo. It's from Nepal and China, and it's the first growth from the end of winter, early spring. They snip the whole bud off before the leaf starts to grow. And it's a phenomenal, it's kind of like scotch, it's almost like smoky, but has like really great kind of stone fruit notes to it. So I drink a lot of tea, and it's great for non-alcoholic pairings. But I eat mostly vegetables. It sounds silly, but I've been on a big arugula kick. Ira Haspel at KK's Biodynamic Farm in Southwold, right down the road from the restaurant. It's the best. I'm not that exciting. I eat lettuce a lot. I eat a lot of lettuce.
Like a bunny rabbit.
And some tea and lettuce.
Yes.
Stephanie, could you explain a little more about the fat substitutes? Because I'm curious, what are we talking about?
So one of the most challenging parts, I think, in the American food system is trying to figure out where to get the right information on what's good for you. I read so many books and study so much material about what's supposed to be good for you. I eat a relatively high fat content. I love the Mediterranean diet. I use a lot of olive oil. My girlfriend's family's from Italy, so we get stuff from her family's farm. But the way first off, I think that people have to figure out what works best for their body and their system, and ultimately what makes you feel good. Like, eat what makes your body feel energized, rested, and ready for what the day has for it. But there's a number of different ways that you can manipulate the mouthfeel of fat without adding fat to it. And a lot of it, that's a really challenging question because there is no real replacement. There's nothing that's anywhere as close to being as satiating on the palate as fat.
And fat's good for you.
When used responsibly, it's really quite good. There's a lot of research recently that's been showing that a lot of lean proteins actually holds the fat and carbohydrates in the body. So I eat a predominantly whole food plant-based diet, and most of it is whole foods. I don't eat processed food, I don't eat sugar, but eating a relatively large amount of fat with a lot of raw vegetables and extreme amounts of dietary fiber. your body processes things and it doesn't hold on very much. So as long as your body's not holding on to a lot of it by having proteins get broken down.
Raw vegetables in particular.
No, I cook stuff a lot, but I crave lettuce and apples. I eat what makes you happy. I mean, ultimately, who cares how you look if you're not around here to be able to smile, you know?
Thank you. I can go on eating butter now.
Buy the best butter you can.
I do.
Just buy the good stuff.
So when you're working in the restaurant and making a sauce, or say perhaps a foie gras terrine, you're tasting it as you go along, or a beurre
Yes,
blanc?
that's, and I'm not very strict about a lot of things. I'm big into creativity and like just doing what you think is right. So when I say I eat mostly vegetables, I cook for other people. I don't cook for myself professionally. So I taste everything that I put out.
Yeah.
So we're extremely focused on things, but we do use a lot of different kinds of fat. I mean, right now I've been on a huge hazelnut oil kick, where I'm cooking shellfish in hazelnut oil and razor clams, relatively low temperatures of cooking, so you don't change the structure of the fat too much. And
Not sous vide
it,
razor clams.
no, you can conventional cook things and have it come out just fine.
Yes,
But
I agree.
if you cook shellfish in hazelnut oil, play around with it, super low temperature for a long time in a pot, and it comes out absolutely brilliantly.
That sounds really good.
Works awesome for oysters too.
Did you just think that up?
Yeah, I read a lot, and I don't remember, I was reading a book and they were talking about hazelnut oil, and there's not a lot of local stuff right now. Like all the root cellars and everything have been depleted, and the greenhouses are just starting to get hot. So about 3 weeks to a month ago, I was trying to just menu planning, and I just kept hearing the word hazelnut oil, and I started thinking about shellfish, and I was like, well, what happens if we do that? And through a little bit of refinement and observation, it came out awesome. So we've been recreating the process. But I don't know how much longer it'll be around, because now there's stuff growing.
But the hazelnut will still be around.
Yeah.
Hazelnut will happen. Yes.
I had two questions for Marcos. One is about downy mildew. Just because conventional, I mean, even vineyards have such a hard time. Downy mildew is treacherous. So how do you deal with that organically? And the second one is about the wolf. I wondered if it's the same one that John Conzella got over from Germany, and if you had a relationship with that.
So downy mildew, yes, it actually affects, the downy mildew that we have is host specific, but it does affect a lot of things, especially vineyards have a big problem with it. It's just the climate, humidity, it's just perfect for making downy mildew. So we use, being certified organic, we can't use the good stuff. The other hop yards, they spray every 10 days or before a wet weather event. Can't do that. So every 5 days I have to rotate from using copper hydroxide, which is probably my best tool that I can use. It has a microbial antiseptic action to it. So when a spore lands on it, that's it. So that's probably my best product. There are some bioproducts, some bacteria. Actinovate works all right. So I go from that, from copper hydroxide, Actinovate, to Jameis stylet oil, which is just a horticultural oil that coats the outside of the leaves and makes it harder. And so I have to kind of just keep going every 5 days with some concoction. You can also use, it was invented in Bordeaux, France. It's called a Bordeaux mixture, where it's just copper hydroxide and sulfur. So I'm going to experiment a little bit with that this year, but you can't go too heavy. Once it warms up close to 90 degrees, you could actually burn the plant, so you don't want to do that. And then the wolf, it is, Conzella brought over a 170. So what does that mean? It means that it does more or less 170 vines per hour. We brought over a 280 just because of the size of our farm. So that does about 280 vines per hour. And remember, we theoretically have 44,000 vines that need to get processed throughout the season.
Yes.
Marcos, thank you all so much, first of all. It was so interesting. Marcos, you own your own land.
Yes.
And you got into farming, your family is not into farming,
They-
they didn't come from farming background?
They did, well, my parents, when they immigrated, they said, we're not gonna do what we did there, obviously, we're gonna, my father became a concrete mason, my mom cleaned houses. And it's actually pretty good, you know, they instilled a work hard mentality in me, and America's the land of opportunity, I love it, I really do. If you work hard, oh my God, you can do all right. So yes, we bought the property, I got, like any good old school European, we got a good deal on it. Why? Because I had to work hard and clean it up. The story was it was owned by the Polio string cheese family, and the cousin that married into the something or other was letting the towns dump leaf litter there. And what's in leaf litter? Shredded bags, any plastic garbage item that you can think of. We literally ran a payloader, a bulldozer for 7 weeks, 7 days a week. And we pulled out by hand 1,000 garbage bags.
Wow.
Garbage bags of garbage, 1,000. So we spent a decent amount of coin, but now we have probably one of the best locations in Matatuck, and
Where is the farm?
can't miss it. If you literally cannot miss it. If you're heading east from Love Lane on Sound Avenue, it's the place with all the telephone pole farm.
How tall
Yeah, so-
How tall are the poles?
They're in the ground 4 feet, and then some are on an angle. So our biggest poles are like 28 feet long, but they're 18 feet out of the ground. So the end poles, they have to be on. The end poles are on an angle, just to kind of hold it. You think about it when it's wet and raining and the wind's blowing. There's a tremendous amount of, and that's why you see a whole bunch of anchors now if you pass by in a pile, because those were done wrong. So I just went around and fixed all them, and it was
I was wondering what that
more work. It was more work. So finally, we're done. No more work for now.
How much land?
20 acres, certified organic.
They attract lightning, like the lightning fields in New Mexico?
I haven't been there. Well, I was one day, and I made sure I got out of there. I don't want to find out, but yeah, because it's a metal guy wire that crisscross, and they anchor it into the ground with metal anchors that go in about 6 feet. So yeah, I'm sure it kind of
Wow.
dances all over the place.
Questions? Yes, Jane.
After you've removed the hop flower or whatever it is, what happens with all the vines and leaves and whatever?
So when you're driving west on South Avenue, so you're driving west and you look just past the farm in the corner, we have maybe 500 yards of our compost pile.
Wow.
So we compost it, yeah, which I do have to turn
And then you use that?
yeah.
You
So then we
use
put it
that
back over the
compost?
field, yeah,
Oh, good.
yeah, absolutely.
Good, okay. That's
Yeah.
interesting.
And this is one of the problems we're solving this year is that we spend an hour every morning during harvest season cleaning up. That's how much leaf litter there is. So I'm working through solving that problem and making it so that it comes out the back of the barn and into a farm wagon so that we can just go and dump it and get my hour back every morning.
Yes, in the
Can
back.
you tell what do you actually do with the pelletized hops?
There's a great video. I know this is like a plug, but on Facebook, Craftmaster Hops, there's actually, you look through the videos and there's a pelletization video there that kind of follows the process. But so we take it from large fluffy cones. 99.5% of brewers don't want that. They want what everybody else just saw. It's just easier to handle, much denser than trying to fill up this huge kettle with massive amounts of hops. So basically what you do is we have a gravity bin, which is how we start the process. We just dump it into the gravity bin. Goes to a feed auger. The auger goes and drops down into a hammer mill, maciates it, turns it into small particles, not quite a dust, but cuts it up so that it's workable. From there, it gets blown up to the top of a surge tank, which has screw augers that pull it and feed it over another screw auger that feeds the actual pelletizer. So what is that? It's 3 massive steel, round steel parts that go in a circle, and it presses it through a die. So it's almost like making sausage, I guess. So you put the meat in the top, and it comes, you grind it, and then you put it in the case. So it's kind of what we're doing.
Yes.
So Stefan, Chef, I'm curious, this past year I know that you guys kind of opened the menu a little bit to bring in some new faces, kind of change the table from being, the anniversary birthday place. How was that? Is it something that you guys will continue?
I love cooking for people, and it drives me crazy when we hit a certain period of time. Like March is by far the worst, and so in an effort to try to kind of keep things fresh, we were always looked at as kind of like an expensive restaurant, and I don't think that that's the case anymore. I think that there's a massive price tag that comes with going out to eat, and we don't want to be restrictive to our diners. So a lot of the times we get a great value from farmers that we work with locally, and we try to reciprocate that onto our guests. So traditionally, for about 4 years, the restaurant was only 3 courses for $75, or a 5-course tasting menu for $105. And now we have a la carte options, 3-course price fix. So we kind of make the servers hunt and peck. When people order a la carte and then end up getting a dessert, we're like, well, we would actually, it makes more sense to do a 3-course. And so we're kind of trying to hunt for the best possible deal for our guests. And we do offer a 6-course chef's taste menu for $125. But I think, I don't like spending a ton of money on food. And I don't think that everyone has to spend a ton of money on food just to have a good meal. So a lot of times, for a long time, I was obsessed with like Michelin 3-star restaurants. Where I was trained in how I work. But I really like 1-star restaurants where you get the same quality food, but the price tag isn't as steep, and you don't have to spend all night there. So we just try to pass the value on that we're getting from the great people of the community onto our guests.
Plus your lunches are delicious.
It's kind of hidden gem is the lunch tasting menu. It's 4 courses for like, I think it's 60 or 65 pounds. Sometimes I change it.
Who's anything with the truck?
What's that? Oh yeah, we also have a food truck in the back of the property. It's available for private catering events if you'd like. But we,
How far do you go?
It depends. We
Southport?
yes, we do. We actually
you were in Madhu for the Madhu.
Yes.
The food truck. Yeah.
So we got the idea. It started off as a byproduct utilization. So we had a bunch of trimmings that we were like, we eat really well at the restaurant for family meal because it's all the stuff that's like not really good enough to sell, but we got to eat that. And then we started doing things like pulled pork, chicken pozole, soups, sandwiches.
Family meals are the best.
It's really, really, really great. So we opened up a food truck in 2011, and that was actually stationary. And so then we bought the new truck in 2014, and that's actually mobile, but it stays on premises. It's open the month of April, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And then 5 days a week after that, 7 days a week between school being out and Labor Day. And it's really casual fare, but more often than not, you'll see me and Claudia out there personally. And it's awesome. It's just a grab and go, hang out, drive by, stop by a brewery, vineyard, hang out and have a great time.
I had another question about, sorry. I know that Chef Hayden was really getting into smoked meats towards the end there, and I'm curious how you feel. Like, do you like to smoke meats, and was that something that you would into?
It's really, really hard to make a living, and it's really, really, really hard to run a restaurant. And Jerry was brilliant at figuring out ways to do things that other people weren't. Logistically, it's a total and complete nightmare. To do, no, I'm not even talking about the like packaging, marketing, and selling. I'm talking about the actual production. We had the idea where we were going to smoke salmon and sell smoked salmon that we used to do at the restaurant because it was super renowned. It was a recipe that was adapted from when he used to work with David Burke back in the day. But ultimately, it didn't really work. And I don't feel strongly about salmon. I think it's horrible. I don't know why we're eating it. There's so many other things that we could be eating that's local or sustainable, that's beautiful. That, like, why is it in 2018 that there's salmon everywhere? Salmon's not supposed to be everywhere.
Bad farm salmon.
It's silly, but that's a whole other rant. Ultimately, the availability of locally sourced proteins, it's a little scarce because it's an emerging demographic. Tom Hart, Deep Roots Farm, Tom Geppel, A. Hans Farm, Holly and Chris Browder, Russ McCall. There's this emerging segment of livestock farmers on the North Fork whose movements could definitely gain some steam. So please buy local. Whenever there's a surplus, wholesale production facilities like a restaurant is graced with a good deal where we're able to put in a value-added product where we would be able to sell. It's kind of like the necessity of losing the potato for vines and hops. because on the North Fork, to be sustainable, you need to have a value-added product. So you can't grow potatoes and make money, but if you grow wine, it's shelf-stable and you could sell it throughout the year. Same kind of thing, where if there's an abundance of locally sourced
We just gotta get the
quality
local
meat.
slaughterhouse going.
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you use Dr. Dish, Sean Tobias, over in the North Fork?
We don't. I would like to. I use Charlie Manwaring, South Hole Fish Market. Charlie's the man.
Got your fresh fish right near my
And
head.
I would like to. We're the only restaurant that he delivers to. It's kind of because it's
It's
two
your
businesses,
personal job to do.
but it's
Just don't care.
it's a really, really great place. Charlie's awesome, and that's one of the best things is that across the spectrum on the North and South Forks, but on the East and Long Island, I think the community is really dedicated to sourcing, and there's a lot of really gifted people in a lot of different industries, and what they're doing at Dr. Dish, I think, is absolutely phenomenal. Just
What
it
took
kind
so
of
long,
becomes counterproductive at a point where when you have a surplus at this point, bringing it to this point, sometimes it gets a little challenging. But if there's a way to figure it out to bring it up to Greenport, I'm down. I love that.
We had Sean Tobias on the panel a couple of years ago, and he was really just like, he's huge now.
Yeah, he had just started out
Yes,
a
exactly.
very short time before
Yep.
that, and
Yep.
I'm really happy to have him.
Okay.
You were the diving board
What
to
is
his
Dr.
success.
Dish?
Excuse me?
You were the diving board to his success.
No doubt, no doubt. It wasn't his genius and hard work at all. It's all about
Dr. Dish is.
Dr. Dish is
Dr. Dish.
a sustainable business model for aquaculture, or for fishing. So what it does is it brings together fishermen from the East End, and it allows them to put together their catch, have it be divided up, and then brought out to restaurants.
Delivered directly to restaurants instead of
You might
going
not always
to a shop or the middleman or the city for processing.
But it's also
Simplified
sourcing the product. So instead of saying, oh, I want wild striped bass, and sending out 20 fishing boats who are all going for the same catch, it's saying, go out and get what you're good at catching. Go out and fish the waters.
What's in
Bring
season.
to us what's there and what's plentiful without exhausting our resources. And then it's putting us, chefs, in a place where we need to exercise some creativity. Because you might not always know what you're going to get, but it's going to be local, it's going to be wildly fresh, and it's going to be of the highest quality because it's going to be dedicating that service to people who are passionate about doing a certain thing and not making them do something they don't want to do.
Yeah, a lot of the top chefs in New York are using Sean Tobias' Dr. Dish. He would deliver tilefish because that was caught that day. And they're like, well, I've never had this before. You know, Eric Repair would be like, I don't know what to do with this. And then once they taste it so beautifully fresh, they're like, yes, please, thank you. It's wonderful. He's traveling all over the world doing this. Costa Rica, he's in Fiji right now. Yeah, I don't know if he's working. Okay, one more question.
When he started Dr. Dish, he started out with individuals. I used to be a member when he very first started. And we used to get whatever we got, we'd pick it up at Jack's Coffee right in front in a cooler.
Isn't he handsome?
So you bought, a share for the season. And you get whatever you got. It was great.
And that was, what do they call the fish, the fish version of a CSA?
CSA.
Same thing.
Yeah.
Community Support Agriculture kind of subscription.
CSF. Okay, I think it's time to enjoy delicious food and drink and tea. Where do you get that white tea?
Serendipity in Manhasset.
Oh, they're
Phenomenal. Silver Buds is a really great one. That's the white yaba. Good stuff.
I like trying different teas. Thank you all for coming. Thank you.